Most of us go through life completely underestimating just how powerful our words are. We think attraction is all about how we look, how we dress, or how impressive we seem on paper. But here's the truth. What actually creates that spark, that pull, that magnetic connection, is so often hidden in the words we choose and how we deliver them. Words are not just sounds strung together. They are triggers. They can unlock emotions, they can change the way someone sees you, and they can flip the switch from indifference to desire in seconds. Think about it. Every man has heard compliments before. Every man has been in conversations before. But the difference between something that goes in one ear and out the other, and something that sticks with him, keeps him awake at night replaying it, is the emotional charge behind the words. That's the secret. When you say something that doesn't just compliment him, but makes him feel something deeper, you're no longer just another person in his day. You become the highlight of his day. This is where most people get it wrong. They think the power of attraction comes from the big, dramatic gestures, when in reality, it comes from the subtleties. It's not about shouting your feelings or trying too hard to impress. It's about knowing the precise words that hit a man's emotional core. And here's what's fascinating: men, just like women, are wired to respond to certain emotional cues. They may not always admit it, but when you use the right words, it bypasses all the logic, all the walls, all the resistance, and it hits them right where they feel it most. Now, when I say words have power, I don't mean in a manipulative way. I'm talking about honest connection. I'm talking about understanding the psychology of attraction and then using language that highlights the best parts of him, makes him feel seen, makes him feel like he's not just another guy in your life. Because here's the thing, most men, no matter how confident they look on the outside, are starving for a woman who actually sees them, appreciates them, and makes them feel special in a way the rest of the world doesn't. And your words can be that bridge. Let me give you an example. Imagine two scenarios. In one, you tell a guy, "You look nice today." That's fine. He'll smile, he'll say thank you, and then he'll move on. In another scenario, you say, "There's something about the way you carry yourself that makes you look so confident. It's really attractive." Now suddenly, you're not just complimenting his shirt or his hair, you're complimenting the essence of who he is, or at least how he wants to be seen. That one sentence can live rent-free in his mind for weeks. Because what did you just do? You didn't just say words, you triggered an emotion. You connected your observation to his identity. And people fall for people who make them feel good about who they are. This is the power of words. They can either be transactional, like handing him a receipt for something he already knows, or transformational, where he walks away feeling a surge of attraction he can't quite explain. And that's why most women underestimate this. They think they need to look a certain way or be perfect, when in reality, men are far more moved by the way you make them feel with what you say than the details of your outfit or whether you got your eyeliner perfect. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but isn't it just about being yourself and saying what's true? Absolutely, but being yourself doesn't mean being unaware. Attraction, like anything else in life, has patterns. It's like music. You can play random notes, or you can learn the chords that always sound beautiful together. Knowing what kind of words create attraction is like knowing those chords. It doesn't make you fake, it makes you intentional. And when you're intentional with your words, you don't leave attraction to chance. You create it. And here's where it gets really interesting. Words not only affect him, they affect you. When you choose to speak in a way that's confident, playful, or appreciative, you actually step into that energy yourself. You become more magnetic, not just because of what you're saying, but because of how you feel while saying it. And that energy is contagious. That's why, when you master the power of words, you're not just influencing him, you're shaping the entire dynamic between you. So next time you're talking to a man, I want you to think about this. Are your words just filling the silence, or are they planting seeds? Are they creating a moment he'll forget by tomorrow, or are they creating a memory that sticks? Because the truth is, attraction is not built in hours, long conversations, or grand declarations. It's built in moments. One sentence, delivered the right way, can do more than 100 generic compliments ever could. And that's why words are your most powerful tool in attraction. They cost nothing, they take no extra effort, but when chosen well, they can make you unforgettable. Because, at the end of the day, what a man remembers most isn't what you wore, or how your hair looked, or what the restaurant was like. What he remembers is how you made him feel. When it comes to attraction, a lot of people spend their time trying to figure out what men want in some sort of superficial way. They think it's about looks, or status, or playing hard to get. But if you dig beneath the surface, if you strip away the bravado and all the posturing, what men actually respond to at a deep emotional level is far simpler and far more powerful than most people realize. Men have emotional triggers just like women do, and when you understand those triggers, you're no longer just another face in the crowd. You become the woman he can't stop thinking about. So, what are those triggers? At their core, men crave respect, admiration, and appreciation. Now, I don't mean respect in the sense of bowing down to him or making yourself small. I mean the kind of respect that makes him feel like the man he wants to be when he's with you. Men want to feel that the way they show up in your life actually matters, that their efforts, big or small, aren't invisible. It's not about feeding an ego for the sake of it. It's about tapping into that deep, instinctive need to feel significant. When you admire something about a man that speaks to his strength, his ambition, his way of handling life, you're not just giving him a compliment. You're validating his identity. And when a man feels that kind of validation, it lights him up inside. He feels drawn to you, not because you said something nice, but because you made him feel like the best version of himself. And here's the catch. Most men don't get that in their everyday lives. Out in the world, they're being criticized, pressured, told they're not enough. At work, they're competing. In life, they're judged. So, when he finds a woman who makes him feel capable, admired, and respected, it's like water to a thirsty man. He can't get enough of it. The second trigger is appreciation. This is where so many people miss opportunities. Think about how often people overlook the little things. A man opens the door. He plans a date. He remembers something you said last week. It might seem small, but when you show appreciation for those moments, it creates a massive emotional impact. Why? Because it tells him you notice. It tells him he's not just going through the motions, he's actually making a difference to you. And when a man feels like his actions have meaning, he becomes more invested. Now, let me show you the difference between generic words and words that hit these triggers. Imagine a guy takes you out and pays for dinner. If you just say, "Thanks for dinner," that's polite, it's expected. But if you look him in the eye and say, "I love the way you always take care of things. It makes me feel so looked after," you've just turned a basic thank you into a statement that feeds his drive to provide and protect. That single sentence doesn't just acknowledge what he did. It makes him feel powerful in your presence. That's the kind of moment that stays with him. And then there's admiration. You can admire a man's intelligence, his ambition, his humor, even the way he handles challenges. These aren't surface-level compliments like, "You're cute." They're acknowledgments of qualities that are tied to his identity. When you admire a man for something deeper, it hits him differently. It separates you from everyone else because most people only ever acknowledge the obvious. But you've seen something in him he's proud of, but rarely gets recognition for. That's unforgettable. The beautiful thing about this is it doesn't require manipulation. You don't have to make things up or flatter him endlessly. All it takes is being intentional, paying attention, and then expressing what you genuinely admire and appreciate. Men are not as complicated as people make them out to be. What they want more than anything is to feel like they matter, like they're contributing, like they're enough in your eyes. When you speak to that, you're not just talking to his ears. You're talking to his heart. And here's something important to remember. Or when you trigger these emotions in a man, it doesn't just make him feel good about you. It makes him feel good about himself. And that's the magic. People don't fall in love with us because of what we do for them. They fall in love with us because of how they feel about themselves when they're with us. If you can be the woman who consistently makes him feel admired, appreciated, and respected, he's going to feel a connection with you that he can't manufacture anywhere else. But let me be clear about this. Triggering these emotions isn't about bending over backwards or trying to please him all the time. It's about being generous with your words when you see something you genuinely admire. It's about leaning into moments of appreciation instead of letting them pass you by. Because when you do, you create an atmosphere of attraction that feels effortless. He doesn't have to chase a fantasy. He gets to live a reality with you where he feels wanted, respected, and important. And that's the real secret. Attraction isn't about tricks or games. It's about tapping into the emotional core of a person and giving them something the rest of the world rarely does. For men, that something is respect, admiration, and appreciation. And when you give it, he won't just notice you. He'll crave you. Because when you make a man feel seen for who he truly wants to be, you don't just capture his attention. You capture his heart. By now you've seen how much words can shape attraction, how they can tap into the emotions men crave most. But there's something even more important than the words themselves, and it's the way you deliver them. Because here's the truth. You can say the most beautiful, powerful sentence in the world, but if your delivery is off, if you don't believe it, if you don't own it, if you don't embody it, it loses all of its impact. What makes words irresistible isn't just what comes out of your mouth. It's the energy behind them. Think about the last time someone gave you a compliment, but it felt flat. They said the right words, but maybe their tone was off, or their body language didn't match. You walked away feeling nothing. Why? Because words without conviction are empty. And it works the same way with attraction. If you're nervous, apologetic, or hesitant, even the most powerful phrase will sound uncertain, and uncertainty kills the spark. On the other hand, if you say something with confidence, with a smile that shows you mean it, with eye contact that communicates certainty, suddenly those same words become magnetic. Confidence is the amplifier. It turns a simple phrase into something unforgettable. Men are wired to respond to confidence because it communicates value. It says, I know who I am, I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to express it. That's intoxicating, and it doesn't mean you have to be loud or bold or over the top. Sometimes confidence is in the quiet way you pause before you speak, the way you hold your posture, the way you allow silence to linger because you're comfortable in it. Confidence isn't about volume, it's about presence. And presence is what makes a man lean in. When you're present, when you're grounded in your delivery, your words carry weight. It's the difference between rushing through a compliment, like you're trying to get it out of the way, versus savoring it like you're letting him sit in the warmth of your attention. The second one, that's the one that makes him feel like he just got hit with something he wasn't prepared for. And he loves it. Timing is just as important as tone. You could deliver the right phrase, but if you blurt it out awkwardly or at the wrong moment, it won't land. Timing creates contrast. Think about telling a man, "I feel so safe when I'm with you." If you say it while you're distracted, looking at your phone, it's just words. But if you say it in a quiet moment, maybe after he's done something thoughtful or protective, when the energy between you is already soft, that's when it hits like lightning. That's when he feels it in his chest, not just his ears. Body language is another piece of the puzzle. If your body is closed off, arms crossed, voice monotone, it doesn't matter what you say, it won't connect. But if your body is relaxed, open, if your eyes light up when you speak, if your smile feels genuine, suddenly the words are alive. And that's the point. Attraction isn't logical. It's visceral. It's felt. The way you deliver your words creates the emotional charge that makes him unable to resist them. I've seen women use the same phrase in two completely different ways. One said it timidly, almost questioning herself as she spoke, and the man barely reacted. Another said it with playful confidence, holding his gaze, maybe even teasing him a little, and the guy was hooked instantly. Same words, different delivery. And the difference was everything. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to be perfect to be confident. You don't have to rehearse every line or get it right. What men respond to is authenticity delivered with certainty. You can stumble over your words, you can laugh halfway through, but if you own it, if you stay connected to your intention, it still lands. In fact, sometimes those imperfect moments make it even more charming because they feel real. This is why it's not enough to just know the phrase that drives men wild. You have to embody it. You have to let it roll off your tongue in a way that feels effortless, like it belongs to you. Because it's not just about telling him something. It's about making him feel it. And when you deliver words with confidence, timing, and presence, you don't just communicate information. You create an experience. And that's what attraction really is. It's an experience. It's not logical, it's emotional. It's not just hearing the words, it's feeling the energy behind them. When a man feels that from you, he's not thinking, "Oh, that was a clever phrase." He's thinking, "Why do I feel so drawn to her? Why do I want more?" He may not even be able to explain it. But that's the power of delivery. It bypasses logic and speaks straight to his instincts. So remember this. The phrase itself is important, but the way you say it is what makes it irresistible. Your confidence, your tone, your timing, your body language, these are the things that breathe life into the words. Without them, the phrase is just a sentence. With them, it's a spark. Because in the end, men don't fall for the words alone. They fall for the woman who delivers them like she knows her worth. Up until now, we've been talking about the power of words and the way they're delivered. But let's get to the heart of it. What is this phrase that makes a man stop in his tracks? What is it that, when said the right way, flips the irresistible switch? The truth is, it isn't about some magical combination of words. It's about a phrase that taps into his deepest drive, the need to feel significant, to feel like he makes a difference in your life. And when you say something that triggers that, you're not just speaking to his ears. You're speaking to his identity. Men are wired to want to be valued for what they bring to the table. They want to feel strong, capable, and admired, but not in a shallow way. When you say something like, I feel so safe when I'm with you, or you make me feel like I can just relax and be myself, you're telling him that his presence, his energy, who he is when he's around you, has an impact. And that's the kind of thing that sticks, because every man wants to feel like more than just another guy. You're telling him he's someone who changes the way you feel. And here's why this works. It doesn't matter how tough, confident, or put together a man looks on the outside. Inside every man is a question. Am I enough? Do I matter? Do I make a difference? Most men never say this out loud, but they live with it. And when you're the person who answers that question with your words, when you let him know he's more than enough for you, you've just tapped into something deeper than attraction. You've tapped into his core. Think about it. A man might get compliments on his looks, his job, his achievements, but those are things he already knows about himself or things the world already acknowledges. What the world doesn't often tell him is how he makes someone feel on an emotional level. That's why the phrase is so powerful. It's not about what he's done. It's about who he is to you. You're saying, your presence has an effect on me. And nothing draws a man in more than knowing he can shift your world just by being himself. Now, this doesn't mean you walk around saying it all the time. If you overuse it, it loses its meaning. The magic of this phrase comes from the moments you choose. When he does something thoughtful, when he shows up in a way that makes your life easier, when he's just being himself, and you feel that wave of appreciation. That's the moment to let it out, not because you're trying to get a reaction, but because it's real. And when it's real, it lands. And don't underestimate the simplicity. You don't need a long speech or poetic words. Sometimes the most irresistible moments come from the shortest sentences. Think about telling him, I love how safe I feel with you, while looking him in the eyes. Or whispering, I love how you always know how to calm me down. When you're stressed and he's there for you. These are the kinds of words that replay in his mind long after the moment is over. He won't forget them, because they feed something he craves but rarely gets. The beauty of this phrase is that it doesn't just make him feel good, it makes him feel like a man in the truest sense of the word. You're affirming the part of him that wants to provide, protect, and show up for you. And when he feels that you see and appreciate that, he naturally wants to give you more of it. It's not manipulation, it's a cycle of reinforcement. The more he feels like his presence matters, the more he leans into being that man for you. I want you to notice how different this is from generic flattery. Saying, you're hot, or you're successful, might stroke his ego for a second, but it doesn't go deep. When you tie your words to the emotional experience you have with him, when you show him how he changes your state of being, that's what bonds him to you. That's what makes him feel irreplaceable. And here's the part most people miss. When you say a phrase like this, you're not just making him feel good, you're making yourself more attractive, because the energy of appreciation, vulnerability, and honesty is magnetic. When you can openly admit, you make me feel safe, or I love how you make me laugh when I need it most, you're not only giving him significance, you're showing your own confidence in expressing your emotions. And that combination is irresistible. So the phrase itself, whether it's about feeling safe, feeling seen, feeling cared for, isn't about the exact wording. It's about the message. Who you are has a powerful effect on me. Say it with confidence, say it in the right moment, and say it with authenticity. That's when it becomes more than just words. That's when it becomes the sentence that 99.9% of men can't resist. Because at the end of the day, what a man really wants isn't just to be wanted, it's to be significant. And when your words show him that he is, he won't ever want to let you go. It's one thing to talk about the kind of words that trigger attraction, but it's another to actually see how they work in real life. Because when you're out there, in the moment, whether you're meeting someone new, going on a first date, or deepening a relationship, it's not theory that matters, it's how you put it into practice. And this is where most people miss the mark. They default to the safe, predictable things to say, the bland compliments, the small talk that doesn't really go anywhere. And while that doesn't hurt, it doesn't create attraction either. It just creates polite conversation. Let's start with meeting someone for the first time. Most people say things like, "What do you do?" Or, "Where are you from?" There's nothing wrong with those questions, but they don't spark anything. They're functional. They keep the conversation moving, but they don't create that feeling of chemistry. Now imagine instead you say, "You look like the kind of guy who," and then you make a playful guess about him. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right, but it creates intrigue. It forces him to lean in and engage, because now he wants to know what you see in him. That's infinitely more memorable than asking about his job for the 100th time. Or, let's take a date. A lot of people will sit across from someone and default to neutral compliments. "This place is nice. I like your shirt. That's cool." Again, fine, but forgettable. Instead, imagine leaning in during the conversation and saying, "I love how passionate you get when you talk about that. It's really attractive." That's not just acknowledging what he's saying. It's showing that his energy has an effect on you. That's what sticks. Because suddenly, you're not just an audience, you're a participant in the attraction. Even in relationships, this difference matters. When couples have been together for a while, they often stop using the kind of language that drew them together in the first place. They say, "Thanks," or "love you," but it becomes routine. What keeps the spark alive is weaving in the kind of words that show impact. If he fixes something around the house, and you say, "Thanks for doing that," it's polite. If instead you say, "I love how you always know how to take care of things. It makes me feel so lucky to have you." You've turned a chore into a moment of connection. He doesn't just feel thanked, he feels valued. The real magic comes when you compare bland words with magnetic ones. Picture this. He makes you laugh. You could just say, "You're funny." That's generic. Or you could look at him, smile, and say, "I love how you can always make me laugh, even when I'm trying not to." That adds vulnerability, it shows effect, and it deepens the moment. One sentence makes him feel like any other guy who's ever cracked a joke. The other makes him feel like he's uniquely able to shift your mood. Guess which one he's going to replay in his mind later. Here's another example. Imagine you're walking down the street together, and he puts his hand on your back as you cross. You could ignore it completely, or you could casually say, "I love how you always make me feel safe." That's the kind of phrase that can stop him in his tracks, because it's more than acknowledgement. It's an emotional imprint. You're not just noticing the gesture, you're telling him what it means to you. That's what makes it unforgettable. And you don't have to wait for big, dramatic moments to use this. The smaller the moment, the more impact it can have. A quick text after a date that says, "I had so much fun with you tonight" is fine. But a text that says, "I can't stop smiling thinking about that story you told" is better. One is polite, the other is specific, personal, and emotional. It tells him exactly what about the night stood out to you and why it mattered. And when he reads that, he's not just glad you had fun, he feels connected to you. What you're doing with all of these examples is simple. You're shifting from describing the action to describing the effect. From "thanks" to "this is how you make me feel." That shift is the difference between being forgettable and being irresistible. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember the details of what happened. They remember how they felt. And here's what's even more important: when you get into the habit of using these kinds of phrases, you start creating an environment where attraction thrives naturally. You're not forcing anything, you're just being intentional with your words. You're paying attention and you're giving voice to the things most people leave unsaid. And when you do, you stand out immediately because you're offering an emotional experience he doesn't get anywhere else. So in real life, whether it's the first hello, the first date, or the 100th time you're hanging out, the key is to stop settling for safe and start going for meaningful. Move away from the bland, surface level phrases and lean into the ones that reveal the impact he has on you. That's what creates those moments that make him pause, that make him smile to himself later, that make him crave more time with you. Because in the end, attraction isn't built in long speeches, it's built in tiny moments where your words make him feel like the most significant man in the room. By now, you've probably started to see the bigger picture of why these words, these phrases, and the way you deliver them are so powerful. But let's take a step back and really understand why this works almost every single time. It's not magic, and it's not luck. It's psychology, it's biology, and it's human nature. When you grasp what's happening beneath the surface, you stop seeing attraction as this random thing that just happens, and you start seeing it as something you can create with intention. At the core, every man is wired with certain needs that go beyond logic. He might think he's looking for beauty or success or someone who shares his interests. But underneath all of that, what he's really looking for is the emotional experience you give him. That's what makes the difference between someone he enjoys spending time with and someone he can't get out of his head. When you say the right phrase in the right way, it taps into his need for significance, for admiration, for validation, and it creates a chemical reaction in his brain. Literally, when you make a man feel important, when you show him that who he is has an effect on you, his brain releases dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that makes us feel pleasure, excitement, and anticipation. It's the chemical that makes us crave more. That's why when you use these kinds of words, he doesn't just enjoy the moment. He starts to associate you with the feeling of reward. Being around you literally becomes addictive, not in a toxic way, but in the sense that you are now linked with the emotions he wants more of. And it's not just dopamine. When you make a man feel safe, appreciated, admired, it also taps into oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Oxytocin is what makes people feel close, connected, like they belong together. That's why a simple phrase like, "I feel safe when I'm with you," can carry so much weight. It's not just words, it's a signal to his brain that you are someone who makes him feel bonded and significant. Combine dopamine and oxytocin, and you've just created both excitement and connection. That's the recipe for attraction that lasts. But let's not stop at the science. Let's talk about the practical side of why this works so often. Men walk around every day with a mask on. They're taught to be strong, to hold it together, to not show weakness. They rarely hear words that affirm the parts of themselves they secretly hope are enough. So when you say something that acknowledges those parts, when you make him feel admired, respected, and impactful, it cuts straight through the noise of his daily life. It bypasses all the walls and goes right to his heart. That's why it feels irresistible, because in a world where he's used to being overlooked or judged, your words are oxygen. Now, here's what's really powerful. This doesn't just work in the early stages of attraction. It works in long-term relationships too. Because no matter how long you've been with someone, that need to feel significant never goes away. Couples who keep the spark alive are the ones who keep speaking to each other's core needs. They don't stop using words that create impact. They don't stop saying the phrases that remind the other person how valued they are. And that's why the relationship stays alive, because love isn't built once. It's built every day in the way we make each other feel. And that's what makes this almost universal. It's not about one type of man or one kind of relationship. It's about human nature. You can try this with someone you've just met or with someone you've been with for years, and the effect is the same. When people feel seen, when they feel significant, when they feel that their presence changes you, they want more of you. That's the pattern, and it's a pattern that repeats itself 99.9% of the time, because it's rooted in the very things that make us human. Of course, the key is authenticity. If you're just saying words to get a reaction, it won't work. People can feel when you're being real, and they can feel when you're forcing it. But when you're genuine, when you actually notice the effect he has on you, and you put it into words, it becomes irresistible. Because now it's not just a phrase, it's an honest expression of the connection you feel. And there's nothing more magnetic than truth delivered with confidence. So, when you ask why this works almost every time, it's because you're not playing a trick. You're speaking directly to the emotional wiring that drives attraction. You're aligning your words with what his brain and heart are already craving. And that's why when you look at him and say, "You make me feel safe," or "I love how you make me laugh when I need it most," or "I feel like I can just be myself with you," he can't help but lean in. He can't help but want more. Because at the end of the day, attraction isn't random and it isn't complicated. It's about creating an experience that makes someone feel significant, special, and unforgettable. And when your words do that, almost every man will find you irresistible.